Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Greg Peterson here, and welcome to the 309th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where we work together educating and inspiring you to become part of your food revolution. Raising farm animals in your backyard is not just rewarding, it's actually easier than you think, especially when you have Kari Spencer to help get you prepared. Just text chickens to 33444 or visit backyardanimals.com and you will receive our free webinar on how to raise chickens, goats, and more, promote biodiversity, and put your backyard animals to work. Today on our podcast, we have someone who wants to help kids get comfortable in the hatchery. We're talking with returning guest Lisa Steele about hatching chicks and raising chickens with your kids. Lisa is a fifth-generation chicken keeper, top-selling author, and the creative mind behind the Better Homes and Gardens award-winning blog Fresh Eggs Daily. You can find her at fresheggsdaily.com. Lisa inspires both the newcomer as well as the seasoned chicken keeper and engages fans worldwide on her Facebook page of the same name with her easy, fun, and accessible approach to raising backyard flocks naturally. She is the author of several books and has a new one for kids coming out the first quarter of 2018 called Let's Hatch Chicks by Voyager Press. Welcome back to the show, Lisa. Are you ready to rock?
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me back.
Excellent. So we got to know you when you joined us for our 8th and our 224th episodes, where you shared about raising chickens and ducks, then about gardening with chickens. Today, we're going to talk with you about getting kids involved in raising chickens. But first, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to lately?
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I have a couple of other books out, and in between taking care of our chickens and ducks and our farm and gardening and keeping up my Facebook page and my blog, I discovered I really do like writing books. So I've just kind of been focusing on that for the last couple years, and I'm super excited about this new book out because it is a kid's book. So it's a little bit different than the previous books I've written.
So when you say kids book, this is an actual illustrated children's book?
So it is. It was really fun because the illustrator that we found, who happens to raise chickens, he lives in France and he has chickens of his own. So he kind of gets them and gets their mannerisms and their looks and that. I sent him photographs of my chickens, my coop, my baby chicks, and he turned them into illustrations, which is really fun. I think the book, it's not coming out till January, as you mentioned, so they're still putting the finishing touches on it. But as far as I know, it's for like the K through 3 age group. So like 5 years old to 8 years old is kind of where the text is focused, but obviously, smaller children, parents could read to them. And I hope that older children, even all the way up to adults, will enjoy the book just because it really is a really cute book. And we tried to make it educational as well as fun for the kids.
How cool is that? I have some kids' books on the shelf here at the Urban Farm, so I'm sure that us older kids will want to take a look at it as well. So what prompted you to write a children's book?
I think kind of everyone goes through the same progression when they start raising chickens. Their first couple batches they buy from the feed store, or, they order online, or they buy older chickens. And then they start to get brave and they say, you know what, I think I want to hatch some chicks of my own. And then once you get the hatching bug, you're addicted. And all you want to do every spring is hatch chicks. So I've done it, a couple of years now, a bunch of batches. And I get bored waiting for the 3 weeks for those eggs to hatch. Every day morning you wake up and you look at your eggs and nothing's happened. 3 weeks is a long time when you're waiting for those eggs to hatch. And I thought, if I get bored, I can imagine how the kids feel, whether they're hatching in a classroom or a 4-H club or FFA or, on their homestead or their parents are hatching the eggs. And I wanted to write a book where it would be a companion book. So the kids would actually have something to do for those 3 weeks where they could learn, what's going on in the egg. And, so you don't just look at that egg and go, oh my God, it looks the same as yesterday. They kind of got an idea of how it turned from just a yolk basically inside the egg to a baby chicken in 3 weeks. So that was kind of the premise of the book. And like I said, I hope adults who are bored with hatching will also enjoy the book because it gives you something to do while you're waiting for those eggs to hatch.
Right.
So that was kind of the premise behind it. And so, part of the book is really detailing what's happening each day for those 21 days. There's really nothing out there, on the market, unbelievably. Because it's kind of a basic concept, but
exactly.
What's happening each day, day 1 through 21. And then throughout, I've sprinkled some kind of I mean, kids love those fun random facts, that just have like nothing to do with anything, but they're like, hey, did you know that some chickens have 5 toes? And your kids are like, ooh, they can tell everyone at the playground or whatever. There's kind of like fun little trivia throughout. And then also some information about, setting up the brooder. If you're using an incubator, we follow Violet, the chicken who wants to hatch eggs. That's kind of the main storyline.
Mm-hmm.
But then, not everyone's hatching under a chicken. So I also wanted to talk about, if you're doing it in an incubator in your classroom, in your house, or sometimes the mom hatches the chicks and then decides she doesn't want to be a mom anymore. There's bad moms out there. And then you have to toss them in a brooder under a heat lamp. So I did like the parallel story there too, which is amazing. I mean, the book is only like 40 pages long. I feel like we jam-packed a lot of information into it.
Wow. Here's one of the amazing things for me is that there's not a book out there detailing this. You found a niche here that's incredible.
I was surprised too. I mean, before, when you pitch a book to your editor, they want you to kind of list what competing books are out there because they don't want it something so unique that nobody's interested, nobody's going to buy it,
Right.
but they don't want a book that's already been written. So I really did a lot of research and bought a bunch of kids' books. And there are a lot out there about like, where does this chicken come from? But there really wasn't anything that detailed the day by day, which I think was the catch that, my editor was like, love the idea. There's a lot of charts that show the embryo each day. So I would imagine they would gross kids out, or maybe not. Kids like gross things, but that's about the closest I could find was the charts that show the embryo each day. And we didn't go that route. We did more of, what's actually happening, like what's growing today, what's developing today, what's going on in there.
Wow, cool. So Lisa, what are the benefits of hatching chicks under a chicken versus an incubator?
Okay, that's a great question. And it really, I've done it both ways. It all comes down to if you have a chicken that's willing to cooperate. Sometimes you want to hatch and a chicken is not sitting. You can't really force them to sit on eggs.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to do is line up where I'm going to get my eggs from. If you have a rooster, obviously your eggs are going to be fertile. If you can line up some eggs and get those under the chicken when she decides to sit, it's perfect because she keeps them warm. She turns them. You don't have to do anything. Basically, she does everything. And then once they hatch, she keeps them warm. She shows them how to eat and drink. She kind of takes them out in the yard and, tells them when a hawk flies by or whatever that's danger. But the biggest benefit to hatching under a chicken is the whole integration thing. I don't know if you've ever added new chickens to your flock.
Yep.
And it's this huge, like, we want to kill each other. You got to fence them and it's horrible. Well, when they hatch under the chicken, they're basically part of the flock as soon as they hatch. I mean, I've had chicks that are 3 days old wandering around with my grown chickens and my ducks. And if they hatch in the coop under a chicken, nobody pays any mind to them. That's how farms used to do it.
Right.
Farmers have all these different pens and fences and everything. The chicks just hatch under the chicken. They hop out of the nest and boom, they're integrated. I mean, it's fascinating because, you cannot get chicks from a feed store and just like toss them into your flock.
Oh, yeah.
Heat lamp and the brooder in the house and the mess and the dirt and the dust. And it's just so much easier to hatch under the chicken. But the thing there is you have to have a chicken who's going to cooperate, and they don't always at the right time.
Right. So could you get some day-old chicks and put them under a broody chicken?
You can. That's a great question. If you're planning on doing that, I would leave some eggs under the chicken, let her go for a week or so, make sure she's really dedicated and she's going to sit. And then, yes, you can go to the feed store, get some chicks. Some people recommend putting them under her at night. I don't recommend that because unless you're going to be there the next morning right at sunrise, things could go really badly. Or during the night, she might decide she's not going to take them. She'll toss them out of the nest and they'll freeze to death. So I just like to do it during the day. I mean, you don't need to trick her. Just show her the chick, start to put it under her and you can tell right away. I mean, she'll make little cooing noises. She'll kind of tuck it underneath her. As soon as she does that, you know that she's going to take to them and then just pull the eggs out. She's got an instant flock of baby chicks.
Wow, that is a great idea.
That's kind of like the hack way, like the lazyman's way of hatching chicks.
Yeah. Well, one of the problems with raising chicks from eggs for us city folks is that 50% of those chickens are going to be boys. And how do you address that?
That is the one downside to hatching is that statistically, half are going to be roosters, half are going to be hens, and that's never going to work in any coop environment or run environment. I mean, you just can't have the same number of roosters as chickens. So on farms in the olden days, obviously they would put the roosters in the freezer for food and they would keep the hens, maybe keep one rooster every couple of years, get a new young rooster for your flock. That's the one downside to hatching, and that results in a lot of roosters shelters, rescues being abandoned. Out here, we can have as many roosters as we want, but I really don't want more than one. I don't even really want one. The reality of it is that most of them will get eaten and you just kind of have to.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah, people want to do this whole like homesteading thing, in air quotes. And if you're going to do it, you have to realize that loss and death and predators and culling roosters, it becomes part of it.
Yeah, part of, farm life, I guess, right?
Right. But like you mentioned, if you go get the baby chicks or if you order chicks online, you can order all females and then you can slip them under your hen. And now your ratio is a lot better because you basically bought the females.
So what's the difference between starting from chicks and starting from adult birds, or I guess pullets is what we like to call them?
Right. So I've only done the pullet thing one time. I had a breed that I just really, really wanted. Somebody nearby, a local breeder, was selling them 3 months old or 4 months old, whatever, just about at the point of lay. And I bought them. Those 3 chickens, I ended up selling them. They were never as friendly as ones that I've raised from chicks. I don't recommend it. I think you'll be disappointed. I think that starting with chicks, it's not difficult. I think people kind of get, nervous about it, but it really isn't hard. And you'll end up with far healthier chickens because you know what they're eating and how they're being raised. And they're going to be so much friendlier.
Yeah. So Heidi, my sweetheart, hand raised, we have 13. Well, they're adult chickens now, and they'll come up and jump in her lap, very friendly, as opposed to the 6 adults that we have that I raised before Heidi showed up that are pretty skittish. So that's one of the big bonuses of raising them from chicks is that, they're much friendlier.
For sure. And handling them a lot. I mean, I read a lot of stuff online that says, don't handle the chicks, don't pick them up, don't play with them, don't this, don't that. And I feel like you need to handle them as much as you can. I mean, they need to stay warm. So like short little trips out of the brooder, or even if they're under the mother hen, I'll reach under her, I'll take a chick, hold it in my hand for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important. It's really important, obviously, to, wash your hands afterwards and not put your hands in your mouth, your eyes, whatever, for the whole salmonella thing. But I think that handling your chicks and chickens and pullets and all that is super important.
It really has them be much more pets, I think, that way, yes?
Yes. And that's really important. I mean, even if, you're not going to name them all, and they're not going to be like lap chickens, there comes a time when you need to catch your chickens, whether, you think one might have, something wrong with them,
Mm-hmm.
or if a predator comes in your yard, whatever. And if you can call them and handle them and they come to you, or you can easily pick them up, I mean, that becomes really important in other situations other than just that you want them, to sit on your lap.
Right. So what about feeding chickens? What do we do about getting them the right balanced meals?
So commercial chicken feed really is the best way to go. I mean, there are recipes out there online for homemade chicken feeds and that. I don't really recommend that. I mean, I think it's difficult to get the ratios right. Chickens more than other animals that you might raise because they are laying eggs and it takes so many nutrients and energy out of them. They really need a well-balanced diet. So
Mm-hmm.
I go with the best quality layer feed you can afford. I don't think that if you can't find or can't afford organic feed, that you're a failure or that you shouldn't raise chickens or that the eggs aren't going to be more nutritious. I think organic's better, but I don't think it's necessary if you can't find it or afford it or whatever. Also letting your chickens out in your yard and let them eat grass and weeds and bugs and herbs and stuff out of your garden. And I give them kitchen scraps, table scraps. I mean, I try to give them a varied, healthy diet, whole grains, lots of fish and meat scraps, fruits, vegetables, kind of the way like we ourselves should be eating, but usually don't.
Right.
But
yeah, exactly.
that stuff's all good for chickens too.
I'll tell you what, I raise soldier flies here at the urban farm, the soldier fly grubs. And when I come up with a bucket of soldier fly grubs, the chickens go nuts.
Though that's interesting you mentioned that. I went down to Texas A&M earlier this year to visit their entomology department, and they're doing lots of studies with the black soldier fly larvae because they actually have lots of calcium in them, which the mealworms don't. So the soldier flies are actually a better treat or feed supplement or whatever you want to call it than mealworms. And they're actually looking into getting the black soldier fly larvae to become the protein source and the calcium source in commercial layer feeds.
Oh, wow. Really?
Right? Which is super exciting because chickens love those things. It's also easier for you to grow them. I did mealworms for a while, but they're kind of difficult with the different trays and like they only eat certain things. Like the black soldier fly larvae, basically, you can throw them in your compost pile.
Yep.
Like whatever you throw them, they'll eat.
I have 2 black soldier fly bins set up here at the urban farm, and they pretty much self-run. I throw rotting food, compost in it. This morning I pulled a 5-gallon bucket of compost out of the soldier fly bin and it had hundreds of soldier flies in it, and I just fed them to the chickens and they just love them.
That's awesome. And that's the other thing. They create compost. So your byproduct after you take them all out is this wonderful composted material. I mean, they're looking at cities and towns using them to like in landfills because they compress stuff down like way, like they'll eat paper and stuff too.
Big time.
Do you have a little ramp so when the little larvae are ready, they walk up the lamp and fall right out and your chickens can eat them?
Yep, self-harvesting, absolutely.
Awesome. That's cool. That's on my bucket list. That's like a self-feeder for chickens. I love that.
Most of them out there you have to build yourself. So I've built a couple of them over the years. I think there's one commercial one out there. So check it out, black soldier flies. I'm working on getting some guests on the show talking about black soldier fly larvae. Look for more of that on the podcast. So what advice do you have for someone just starting out with chickens?
Well, obviously, first of all, check your regulations, know what your town laws say, so you don't get into it and spend all this money on a coop and everything and then find out you can't have them or whatever. But find out the regulations, how many you can have, if you need permits and stuff. And then I would say, read some books, read some magazines. There is a ton of information online. I would say just be careful about the source. It's almost like there's too much information now.
Yeah.
When I started with chickens like 10 years ago, there wasn't as much, but now it's almost like there's too much information and you can fall down this rabbit hole of, clicking on one link to another link to another link. Just use your common sense, talk to your grandmother if you can, talk to somebody who, in your neighborhood who raises chickens, like just get as much information as you can. They're living things. So you shouldn't be, caught off guard with, like medical issues or health issues or, you need a first aid kit. Like just be prepared. It's easy and it's fun. Anybody can do it. I mean, in a teeny backyard in the middle of the city, you can do it.
I'm a big proponent of if you have a backyard, you should have 3 or 4 hens out there. They eat bugs and weeds. In permaculture, we call this stacking functions. So they're eating bugs and weeds. They're doing a nice amount of tilling and they're giving us eggs every day. So they're workers and they're providing a really nice product for us.
Exactly.
Remind us how you got into chicken keeping, would you?
So sure. So my grandparents actually were chicken keepers. I mean, like that's what they did. In Massachusetts, they had a chicken farm. They sold the eggs and the meat to restaurants and that's how they supported their families. So I grew up across the street from their farm. They had pretty much, by the time I came along, they were older. So they were grandparents, so they had kind of scaled down. But we always had chickens growing up, just a small flock. I kind of was over the whole small town thing by the time I finished high school. So I went to college and worked on Wall Street for a couple of years. My husband, he was in the Navy. We bounced around. Long story short, we ended up at a farm in Virginia and I started raising chickens. It's that whole full circle thing you're talking about.
Right.
Like you try to escape it and then all of a sudden you're back exactly where you started. But it feels right. I mean, this is what I was meant to do. And I really do love the whole lifestyle. Like you said, even if you live in an urban area with a small backyard, just adding a couple chickens in a small garden, I just think your quality of life is just so enhanced. They're relaxing and it's healthier for your family and it's like a good family bonding thing. Whether you're building a coop or collecting the eggs or weeding the garden, it just makes your family spend more time outside together, I think. Just such a positive thing in so many ways.
So Lisa, there are all kinds of breeds of chickens out there. How do we know which ones to pick?
That's true. I mean, I think there are over 100 different breeds of chickens, and it can get kind of overwhelming. I think when you're doing your research before you dive into this, if you look at some of the hatchery websites, My Pet Chicken, Meyer Hatchery, I mean, there's kinds of hatcheries, but they have wonderful photos of the chicks, the grown chickens, what kind of color eggs they lay, and they also have great information on temperament. Some chickens are just naturally more calm. Like if you have kids and you really want nice lap chickens, if you go with the Orpington family, Buff Orpingtons, Lavender Orpingtons, Australorps, they're all super friendly, calm, whatever. And if you're not really interested in that temperament, if you go with the Leghorns or some of the blue egg layers, like Americanas, I mean, they're nuts. Every single one of them I've had is nuts. But they lay beautiful eggs, so I deal with them. But temperament, definitely, almost like dogs, different breeds do have different temperaments.
Oh, interesting.
So that's a consideration, definitely a consideration. Then there's a lot of, middle of the road breeds that aren't totally nuts and aren't super friendly lap chickens, but they're just fine. They're just chickens,
Right.
They'll be as big as you want them to be. Then you've got issues with mostly heat. Most chickens do really well in the cold. So if you live in a super cold environment, I wouldn't necessarily, limit myself to any breeds. But if you live in a hot area, like you're in Arizona, you really should consider some heat tolerant breeds. A lot of the Mediterranean breeds, the Leghorns, Andalusians, Penedessencas, there's lots of breeds with they tend to have smaller bodies, large combs. That's how they let the heat out. And those breeds would be better, so you're not dealing with heat exhaustion or something like that. But for the most part, I think that there's no right or wrong breed. And I think that if you just go through, a catalog or you go to your feed store and usually they'll have photos of what the grown-up chicken's going to look like. If you just pick something that appeals to you, it's going to be fine. all the breeds get along with each other for the most part. There are some breeds that are a little more timid and can tend to be picked on a little bit, but really you can't make, I don't think, terrible mistakes in picking your breed.
And that leads me to the next question, and that is, where do we get our chicks from?
There are feed stores popping up all over the country. I mean, there's likely a feed store near you that will have baby chicks in the spring. That's probably the easiest. If there's a certain breed that you really, really have your heart set on, you're likely going to have to order from a hatchery or from a breeder. They ship them through the mail. It's perfectly safe. It goes fine in 99% of the cases. Baby chicks hatch. They don't need to eat or drink for the first, day or so after they hatch. So they can pop them in a box, send them in the mail, and they get to the feed store and they're just fine. Or send them to you, if you've ordered them.
Right.
I've done the through the mail thing. And like I said, most of the time it goes well. Of course, things happen, boxes get lost or held up or whatever. But, so they've been doing it for like 100 years. I mean, I think chicks used to be delivered to feed stores by train, like in the late 1800s. So they've been doing this for a long time.
Wow.
A lot of people feel like they can just order locally, and that's not really true. You can order from pretty much anywhere in the country and have your baby chicks shipped to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us again on the show today, Lisa.
Thanks. It's been fun.
So how can our listeners get a hold of you, find your books? Tell us a little bit about your website and how people can find you.
Sure. So my website is fresheggsdaily.com. And I have tons of information. I think there's over 800 articles, organized by topic. You can use the search bar, if there's something specific you're looking for. You can also email me, Lisa@fresheggsdaily.com. I do answer all my email. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fresh Eggs Daily. And my books are available. I have signed copies available on my website, or they're at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold.
Wherever books are sold. Yeah, there you go. Give us your email address again.
Lisa@fresheggsdaily.com.
Perfect. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/Let's Hatch Chicks. And if you'd like to hear more from Lisa, you can find her podcasts at urbanfarm.org/Fresh Eggs Daily and urbanfarm.org/Gardening with Chickens. Both these links will be on our show notes page for today's podcast. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Raising farm animals in your backyard is not just rewarding, it's actually easier than you think, especially when you have Kari Spencer to help get you prepared. Just text chickens to 33444 or visit backyardanimals.com and you will receive our free webinar on how to raise chickens, goats, and more, promote biodiversity, and put your backyard animals to work.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.